Well, welcome back, everybody, to Music Talk. I'm Dave.
I'm Mike.
I appreciate all the new subscribers. Everybody checking out our videos. We really appreciate it. We're doing this for fun. And if you guys are getting anything out of it, that even makes it better.
That's
We're
right.
just a couple of old dudes talking about music.
That's right.
Drinking beer, talking about music.
That's right.
But this week, we're going to talk about an old band. And it is the newest album from them called, well, let's say the band name first, right? Uriah Heep. And it's
That's right.
called Chaos and Color. Color, actually.
Color.
It's the English spelling, the British
Mm-hmm.
spelling, I suppose. So pretty cool. It's like a book. Look at that. This thing opens up. It's a very good CD cover, man. It's one of the better ones. Got some cool little pictures in here. And then you go through and you got this crazy guy screaming. I guess what the album's about is what's in this cat's head,
Chaos.
right?
Mhm.
Uh, then you got the words to songs, and then you got pictures of all the cats in here. You got Mick Box, and I'm not going to bore you all with all that, but anyway, it keeps on going. There you go. You got this. There's your bass player and the drummer, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get back here and you got all the credits and all this, and the little sleeve for the CD, and the back gives you the tracks. This is the deluxe edition, so this has an additional song on here called Save Me Tonight demo, right? Also,
Huh.
let me show you something too real quick. This is the CD,
Yes.
just so I can get that out the way. But
Mm-hmm.
with the demo, with the deluxe version, gets this cool patch. Now, I know y'all young cats don't understand, but we used to sew these things on our jackets, right?
That's right.
So one problem I had with this is the album's called Chaos and Color, but it's a black and white patch. So what's up with that? No color? I guess this is just a chaos. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Super cool. Got a patch with it. Wasn't expecting that. So honestly, I was a little surprised on this CD. I was not expecting to come out of the gate like they did. But
Yeah. Save
man,
me tonight. Mm-hmm.
they sure did come out of the gate rolling,
Oh yeah.
man. So, I mean, we could talk about the band a little bit if you want, or we can go through some of the tracks and throw it in there as we go. Totally up to you, Mike. You're probably going to
Well.
be more into it. This is the first thing I've ever bought by Uriah Heep, even though I've been aware of them my whole life. I
Mm-hmm.
just never was, I never bought their stuff and really dived into them until this CD. And then I went back and found some history on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've probably know more about them because you were coming up with them. So,
Well, they were like, okay, when I was a teenager, I was into them. Of course, everybody had to have the album "Look at Yourself." I mean, that great album,
mhm.
and
So
it was just one of those things because you had all these prog rock bands coming out. You had Yes, you had Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I mean they all had their own unique sound. And Uriah Heep comes along, July morning and Look at Yourself and all that stuff, and it's like, oh my God, you
yeah,
know. But I never really bothered at that time, being a teenager, of really paying attention to who the musicians were. I was just enthralled by listening to the whole band. The only band that I knew the names of the people in the band were the Beatles
right. Yeah.
and Simon and Garfunkel. I mean, that's self-explanatory. But
So
other than that, Uriah Heep.
yeah,
But
and a little
I
bit
got
that I knew of them was, we used to do Easy Living and Stealing. Those were two
mm-hmm,
songs that I've done in bands. I mean, I just know them songs because we did them in the band. Now they had other ones like Gypsy, right, and the Wizard,
yep, yep,
and apparently their best-selling record was Demons and Wizards, from what I
yep,
understand.
yep.
And then you have one with you there.
Yeah, Demons and Wizards, Magician's Birthday, and Sweet Freedom were supposedly their best sellers,
Yeah,
which I don't understand because Look at Yourself was,
the
my
first
God, that was,
hits,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's one that really put them on the map.
So you got the Magician's Birthday right there, right?
Yeah, I got that one right
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
So
can't, I mean,
yeah,
that is a winner there.
yeah.
Here we go. Let me back up a little bit.
That's
Here
cool.
we go.
That's
Yeah.
a cool album cover, man. And
Yeah.
that's
And
why I loved albums back then, because they always had the covers, some great cover work. Well, that's
and
awesome.
here's the thing too about these guys. I was going to mention that earlier. They also list all the production crew and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so wild. It's just like when I was doing the history, uh, looking at their bios and everything. And they're on tour right now. All their tours taking place over in Germany, but they had all the band listed, and then right under the band, they had all the technical crew listed. Everything from lighting to, and the drum tech is also the guitar tech.
Yeah. And what's funny about that? Because back in the day when we got records, you would get all that information. You knew who
Yeah.
the lighting guy was and the
Right.
stage guy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool that they actually did all that back
Yep.
then.
Yep.
Everybody got credit, right?
Right. Right.
So, yeah, this one here was actually produced by a guy named Jay Rustin.
Mm-hmm.
This was all recorded, of course, over in UK, which it was a fantastic recorded album. I mean, everything was sharp and crisp, and the sounds were wonderful.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, dude, what a great record, man. Especially the recording of it. So, the only original guy left right now is Mick Box. And man, I
Right.
gotta tell you, Mick Box, I've listened to some of their stuff in the past couple of weeks because we've had this for a couple of weeks. I've been putting Mike off on this one. He's been on me for 2 or 3 weeks. Man, we got to do this one. I'm like, I got to go back. I got to listen to some of their stuff first, because I didn't want to come in cold, right? But dude, why is Mick Box not known more for his guitar playing, man? The guy is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things of it's a band.
Yeah.
You're a product of the band. You're not. I don't think he's ever put himself out there to be a session musician or whatever. So
Yeah.
he's just a product of Uriah Heep, and Uriah Heep is him. It's his blood. I mean, that's him.
But the thing that kills me is from 1967 until now, I cannot tell you one time that I've ever heard anybody put Mick Box in a top 20 guitar players.
Uh-uh.
And that's just unbelievable to me.
Well,
I mean, listening to the old stuff, he was killing it then. This album, he is ripping it, man. I mean,
you got to hear their live stuff.
yeah. I mean, I went and heard some
God.
of that stuff too. And it's like, dude, I mean, how is he not in the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
How has he never been in the conversation?
I read something. There was something somewhere in the bio that I was reading, and he actually said that it was never about popularity or anything. It was always about music, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that, but
and I that's what I'm saying. I think it takes somebody out there actually pushing your name around to get you noticed for these guitar player things and stuff, I mean, um, unless you're just so phenomenal that you can't be ignored. But another thing too is, Uriah Heep's not in everybody's bucket list, to
no,
listen to.
no, that's true. But but for me, it's like, I mean, there's a lot of bands out there that aren't really super famous, but they're guitar players,
right?
Because it's always like, man, this guy's like so good, and this guy's that. But I have never even heard Mick Box's name mentioned. I didn't even know what his name was until I started researching this. I had no idea he was the only guy left in the band that was original.
Well, these guys were more known as a vocal band. They were actually known as the Beach Boys of metal.
Right. Well,
that's what they were called.
Well, one thing I'll say about that is their harmonies remind me a lot of what Styx and Queen were doing, and they were taking it from Uriah Heep.
Uriah Heep, yep.
Yeah, so they were inspiring these guys, and I mean, and I'll talk about this as we go through the record, but there's a couple of songs, man, it sounds just like Styx.
Yeah,
their vocal work for sure.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, I know that Uriah Heep's been around forever, but these guys have also, these newer guys in the band are inspired by people like Styx,
Yep.
Journey,
Mm-hmm.
yes, things like that. And I'm sure they all had influences and been around each other for many years. But I mean, I just think it's unbelievable that Mick Box hasn't really been out there. In my opinion, I've never really heard of the guy
Mm-hmm.
ever, and it's like it's unbelievable as good as he is. And I mean, Uriah Heep's been known to have great players, right? Especially bass players, man. Because I'm going to tell you a few of them right now that came out of there. You had Bob Daisley for one. He was only with
Right.
him a short time, but then you had what's his name? Gary Thane,
Yep.
fantastic musician, great bass player. Then you
Yep.
had Trevor Boulders, another fantastic bass player. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these guys are just great bass players.
Right.
And then John Wetton, you had
Yep.
John Wetton in the band. I mean,
He just passed away, as a matter of fact,
yeah.
not too long ago.
Then drummers Lee Kerslake,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Slade, Nigel Olson. I mean,
Yep.
these guys are freaking phenomenal, man. And that's just the bass and drums. Then you had people like John Lawton in there. It's fantastic. I mean, it's just David Byron on vocals. I don't know, man. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
You,
Well,
you
that's
know,
what I'm saying. We could be here till next week talking about
and Ken
all the
Hensley. Don't let me
musicians and
forget
stuff.
Ken Hensley too.
Yeah,
So, but
exactly.
other than that,
Yeah.
I'll
But
move on.
it's like, they've got that signature sound though, and that's what they were known as the Beach Boys of metal. But the other part of their sound was that Hammond organ
Yeah,
in there. I mean, those keyboard parts molded the whole sound
yeah,
of Uriah Heep.
right.
And without that keyboard in there, it ain't happening.
Well, the lineup we got now, we got Mick Box, we just talked about. Then we got a guy
Yep.
named Phil Lanzin, who's on keys, and a
Yeah.
guy named Bernie Shaw, who's doing all the vocals.
All the vocal work. You got
Now,
Russell Gilbrook on drums
on
and
drums,
Davy
Rimmer
Rimmer on
on
bass.
bass. So Phil Lanzin and Bernie Shaw were actually in a band together in '78 called
Mm-hmm.
Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
They had another name called Paris, I think, and then they switched it to Grand Prix.
I
So
remember that name. Yeah.
so yeah, they did a couple albums. And then in '87, Phil and Bernie joined Mick Box.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they got into Uriah Heep. So
Yeah.
these two guys have been in the band since '87.
Yeah.
That's 30,
Been 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah,
Well
at
over
least
30
30
years.
years. Yeah. And
So
then Russell Gilbert and Davy Rimmer, they brought them in,
yeah,
I guess about four or 5 years ago.
Russell's got in there in 2008.
Yeah.
And then Dave's joined in like 2013, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
That's really all I know about them two guys. I don't really have much on them. I couldn't
Right.
find
Right.
much. But I
Yeah.
do believe that Dave Rimmer, the bass player, Reimer, not sure how you pronounce it, he's he's part of the Frontier Records guys, man. Because this first song that we'll talk about is called Save Me Tonight. And
Right.
it was
Mm-hmm.
written by Rimmer and it was also written by Jeff Scott Soto.
Okay.
So now, like I said, on the deluxe version, you'll get another copy of Save Me Tonight, and it's got demo on there. Well, that demo is Dave Rimmer and Jeff Scott Soto's, of course, demo of it with two other guys, a guitar player and a drummer. And it's pretty close to what you hear on the first song,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got a different intro. There's a breakdown in the middle, and there's a whole nother verse that didn't make it on the cut
Right.
for theirs. So, but I do like the demo version. It's got some good stuff in it, and I suggest check it out too. And
Yeah.
it's different sounding. It's not quite as polished, but the version number one on this CD is freaking unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, now one thing I want to point out about Uriah Heep in general, not to take away from getting into this album,
Yeah,
they opened a lot of doors. They were part of that first movement of prog rock, if you want to call it that. They're calling it heavy metal here. Uh, they were also the first rock band to play Moscow, December 1987. to 180,000 people, which left the doors open for all these other bands that put tours together now
Yeah.
that are going over to Moscow, and it's on their tour dates.
Yeah.
Um,
That's cool.
yeah, it's I mean, yeah, they're the OGs, man. Yeah, I mean,
Well, and then if it wasn't for Uriah Heep, Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley in 1980, 81 went and played with Ozzy and did the first two Ozzy albums.
right.
So they pretty much were the writers of those with Randy Rhoads.
Yep.
Them three guys wrote the first two albums. So, so you got to give Uriah Heep a lot of props, man. I mean, they did a lot for music, and they don't get really enough credit, probably.
I think they have more popularity worldwide than they did here in the States. Now, there was a thing that I saw where they had sold over 40 million copies of albums worldwide.
Wow.
And only 6 million of them are accounted for here in the United States.
Yeah.
So figure out the rest of it.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, okay. And
Yeah.
that's it. See, there's the big worldwide stage is much different than what we're accustomed to here in the States.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you got to go digging for that stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
it sucks because there's a lot of bands that we like now that are more popular overseas than they are here.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they're some of the best bands out there, and they're not being heard, you know.
No, not being heard. And therefore there is a lot of stuff that's done in foreign languages that
Yeah.
would probably, if we were to open the door for them, would wind up having English versions of the same tunes.
And they'd be huge over here.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, we'll go back and roll these out. Save Me Tonight.
Okay.
Talked a little bit about that and the
Yep.
demo. So this one surprised me a little bit. I wasn't expecting this. I mean, right off the bat, it smacks me right in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rocking ass song, dude. I mean,
oh yeah,
the keyboard and guitar solos, man. I mean, that guitar solo kicks ass in this one.
oh
And,
yeah.
I mean,
The whole band,
tight song,
band's kicking ass.
for sure. And I know you were talking about how they were saying this is a hard rock band, but I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, where I think it's a prog rock band because to me, prog rock, I can't understand any of the words on these songs. So that's a number one thing for me that I know it's a prog rock album if I don't know what they're talking about half the time. And I read these lyrics and half the time I don't know what they're talking about. But and it's fine because it's still a great song, you know. But that's why I'm classifying this as prog rock because I have no idea what they're talking about half the time.
I classify it as prog rock because it does have movements in the songs.
Yeah, for
Not
sure.
just they're not just hanging on to the four on the floor type thing. They have breakdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It's vocal harmonies are worked out precisely and stuff, and they nail you at times. It's almost like a horn section hitting you when they hit them, and it's like,
Right.
it's just, yeah, I mean, it's precise.
And some of the stuff I'm going to reference will be another reason why I'm considering it prog. So,
Yeah.
we go to number 2, the Silver Sunlight, and this
Mhm.
is more what I was expecting from
Uh-huh.
Uriah Heep. The 1st
Mhm.
one to me, I didn't think that was Uriah Heep, but it was a great song. But number 2, Silver Sunlight, I mean, this is what they sound like to me when I think
Yep.
of Uriah Heep. It's
Yep.
the older sound. It's got a great riff that on the bridge, that bridge chorus, bridge solo thing. I
Yep.
really like the way they did that because they broke up this, a lot of times, like when we did Deep Purple, just about every song was cookie cutter. You
Right.
had the verse, chorus, solo guitar, solo keyboards, chorus out, right? Something
Yeah.
like that. So this one they broke it up because they did a bridge in between the solos. It was like a bridge, chorus, bridge, solo. I mean, it was weird. The way that this one went was completely put together different than most songs are. They do it a couple times. I'm going to mention it later too. But I like the way they did the bridge, chorus, bridge, and then the solo. Normally it's bridge, chorus, solo, right?
Right.
But here they brought the bridge back, and I was like, man, that's really cool. And then they ended it with the bridge, and I was like, man, that's even better. So I like the way they put this one together. It wasn't so cut and dry like you normally would hear.
Mhm.
But a great song. And then you get Hail Hail the Sunrise. And this one had a 70s feel to me.
Yep.
And I love the breaks. It had a lot of dynamics in it. The solos were fantastic. It was kind of deep purplish a little bit to me.
Yeah.
I was feeling
Yeah.
a little deep purple in this one. Maybe some rainbow in there. But that's what it felt like. Then we get to number 4, Age of Changes. So you probably know what I'm going to say about this one. Too many ahs, too many oohs, whatever it is. I mean, it was all over this song. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
all right, whatever. But it was okay. you know. But the drummer was doing some cool runs in it. I
Mhm.
mean, and the organ was the sound of that organ, dude. Oh my gosh, man. It's so good, that sound that he was getting. And I don't know how you feel about the drummer sound on this record,
I
but it was
loved it.
tight, dude.
I loved it, man.
I mean, him and the bass player sound, just the sound was fantastic. And they were
Yep.
tight together too. But I mean, man, they were getting some good sounds. That's what I was saying earlier. This thing was recorded super well.
Yep. Yep.
They were getting everything. I did have a problem with some of the lead vocals for a while there, but we'll talk about that later. Um, so yeah, Age of Changes. It was one that I really didn't care as much for, but there was some good stuff in it. Um, then we get to Hurricane, and Hurricane has this fantastic, catchy chorus. Man, I mean, this song should be played on the radio. I don't know why it's not. This is a radio song, man.
Yeah.
That chorus, you can hang right on it, man. And and there's a lot of these songs that have catchy choruses.
Yeah, I just
So,
I just love the way it introed. It's like when you look at the title of the song and then you hear the intro, it's like, yeah, they're emulating a hurricane,
yeah,
man.
for sure. Yeah.
It's getting ready to hit.
Yeah. And this one here is what I was talking about earlier, that when they went into the solos, I want to say they did a keyboard solo first, and then they brought a verse in, and then they did the guitar solo. So instead of just doing your traditional trading off, they put a verse in between, and I thought that was great.
Mhm.
Because again, you're not doing the same pattern. They're really breaking these songs up so well.
Right.
It's because it's not what you expect. They're throwing stuff at you that you're not expecting. When you're listening to the songs, you're usually like, okay, now we're gonna go to this, but they're like, nah, we're not doing that. We're gonna
Mhm.
go here, then we'll go.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. That's your Uriah Heep. I mean, that's part of
yeah,
their signature. I mean, they were in a league of their own, man.
right.
Still are.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the band is so tight, man. I mean, even though you figure 2013, the bass player joined, right? That's still
Yep.
10 years, man.
Yeah.
So they've got 10 years under their belt with the rhythm section,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
super tight, man. So now we get to One Nation, One Sun. And to me, I got a lot to say about this one. It reminded me, first, I'm going to tell you, it reminded me a little bit of the Little River Band's Cool Change, way it started. His voice kind of sounded like that guy. And in fact, I was like, is this the guy from Little River Band?
Right. Right.
But it's not, obviously.
Uh-uh.
But this song, man, is the most beautiful song.
It's a
I
good
mean,
rock ballad, man. It's
oh
a
man.
killer
So
ballad.
it had this nice little break. And then when he says that thing where, all in harmony, there's like 4-part harmonies there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not just saying harmony, you're getting the
Harmony.
yeah, where all these other bands have drawn from, and that we all listen to. This
Right.
is the Uriah Heep harmony that has created all the harmonies of bands that we love now.
Yep.
The bass is great in this, and when the band comes in, it reminds me. I know this is really off the mark, but it reminded me a little bit of the Queensryche when they're doing that boom, 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 boom. It was.
Right. Right.
I'm just gonna tell you, man, this was one of my favorite songs on the record.
Yeah.
Which I,
I liked it a lot. I all the songs I liked. The more I listened to them, even the ones that I was kind of shying away from at first,
mhm.
really grew on me quite a bit.
This
And
one I just thought was a very beautiful song. I mean, it,
yeah.
it was fantastic. I just loved it. And then now we get to number 7, Golden Light. And this kind of reminded me of like an Irish or a Scottish song almost. You know, it had
Yeah. Yeah.
that feel about it, right?
Right.
And the drummer's killing it, man. He's doing this little freaking thing. You know, I don't even know what it's called, but he's killing it, man. You know, this Irish march thing that he's doing.
Right. Right.
You know, and he's hitting the bell and the guitar when he comes into the beginning part of that his pre-solo, I'll call it. That lick sounds like he's emulating a bagpipe to me. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, and it was like something you would hear on a bagpipe. I'm like, man, that is just this whole thing just turned into this like Irish, Scottish
Uh-huh.
thing. I don't know
Uh-huh.
what you would call it, but to me, and then the drummer is doing this little marching thing, and man, it was just crazy. I really like that one too. Um, and I like all the songs. Don't get me wrong, but there's just a few that really stuck in my head, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and then number 8, "You'll Never Be Alone." So back
Another
to
ballad.
yeah, and this is another one where it's this weird story, right? I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Again, this is a common thing with me. I'm kind of don't know what they're talking about. Uh, but but the opening part reminds me of Squonk from Genesis, and it's got a real cool syncopated move. But I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Squonk from Genesis, but it really reminded me a lot of that. And then it sounds a lot like Kansas in there.
Hmm.
Heard a little bit of the Wall, you know, and then
Yeah.
not the Wall from Floyd, but the Wall from Kansas.
Right.
But the harmonies on this one is where it really sounded like Styx. You know, it was almost like it's Dennis DeYoung singing backup on these because I
Right.
swear,
Right.
dude, I'm like, gosh, that sounded a lot like Styx.
Hmm.
Great song though. Weird
Hmm.
story, great song. You know,
Yeah.
and then I don't know if you were keeping up with any of these lyrics or not.
I was just listening to the whole package, man.
Well, see,
Yeah.
that's what I should have did because I'm trying to go through the words and I'm like, what are they talking about? Anyway, who cares? Let's just get back to it.
That's right. Let's crack another beer and let's get on with it.
Yeah. And then we get to number 9, which is "Fly Like an Eagle," and it's nothing like Steve Miller's, right?
No.
But man, it had this really cool synthesizer solo in it. I was so glad to hear a different sound, you know, because he's
Hmm.
playing the crap out of an organ, man. I mean, he tears it up. But man, when he brought that synthesizer in there, I was like, nice. I really like that.
Hmm.
A little bit of it, you know, I got a note on here that says kind of similar to some of the other stuff, but it's still a good song. Um, then we get to number 10, and this is the long one. This was like a 8-9 minute song here. So I love the way the keys and the guitar did their solos. And then guess what? Bass solo. I'm like, all right, now we got a bass solo. And then they do a little thing, and then another bass solo. I'm like, 2 bass solos. You know, it's got a little fuzz on there, a little
Hmm.
overdrive. It's cool. So then they go through all that, and then at the 5-minute mark, it goes into this little piano suite, right? So you get this
Yep.
little piano suite, and then turns into a completely different song after like a minute. And you're like, what is this? Now it's a whole nother song. I actually thought the song changed because I
Uh,
was ready to go, okay, let's see what we're at now. But it's the same song. And I'm like, so then for like another entire minute, it's a completely different song. And then it goes back to the original. I'm like, man, this song's all over the place, you know? Again, why I call it prog, because that's what prog does to you. Takes you
hmm.
everywhere, right?
Hmm.
It reminded me of something Rainbow would have done. Like if Ronnie James Dio was singing this song, it would have been, or even Joe Lynn Turner, I would have swore it was Rainbow.
Yeah.
You know, uh, it was a great song though. One of my favorites on the record too. It's up there, because it was so crazy, right? Then number 11, "Closer to Your Dreams." It's that shuffle. It's got the
Yep.
shuffle going on. It
Yeah.
reminded me of
Easy
Easy
living.
Living, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's
But
what.
that's what Uriah Heep is known for. They're known for their shuffles.
Yep.
So they had to put one in there, man. They had to
And,
put it in.
yeah, and when I heard it, I'm like, man, is this an Easy Living cover? At
Yeah.
first, I'm thinking it's really close, but then it's like, they had to do that because, if you're going to go back to traditional Uriah Heep, this would be like off their first record or two. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
and it was okay for what it was. I liked it all right. Great bass line. I mean, he's rolling it. The drummers they're all doing their part. It was just a little weird because I'm like, all of a sudden, you got this shuffle song after all this prog stuff. Now we shuffle out, right?
I
And
got
of
to tell you
course, on
though,
the deluxe, you got the 12th song, which is "Save Me Tonight," the demo, which I've already talked about. So
a lot of props to Russell Gilbert of 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 bringing Kerslake feel into that shuffle. I mean, you listen to it, and it's just like he's playing that shuffle the same way Kerslake was playing it on Easy Living,
yeah,
and it's just got that same feel. And
and
yeah, I mean, it's the old school shuffle, you know. That's
well,
all it is. Just put to a rock song, you know.
some of the stuff I was listening to on a couple of the documentaries I was watching, they said there was somebody had made a mention that no one could do that shuffle like Kerslake could, like a 12 bar, whatever they call it. You probably know
Mhm.
what I'm talking about.
Right.
But the shuffle that he can do with his intricate bass drum is what made him stand out
Right.
because he could do that stuff with like it was nothing,
And sing at the same time.
and sing. Yeah, you know. And the thing too is Kerslake was a big songwriter for Uriah Heep.
Yep.
So the drummer actually wrote 4 songs on here. Gilbrick,
Oh,
him and a guy named Simon Pinto wrote 4 songs.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wrote Hail to the Sunrise, I believe is one. He wrote Hurricane,
Mm-hmm.
that was his. And then the two there in the middle, he wrote um,
One Nation.
You'll Never Be Alone and Fly
Oh,
Like an
okay.
Eagle were both his.
Okay.
So yeah. Um, and he had a guy named, yeah, You'll Never Be Alone, Fly Like an Eagle. A guy named Simon Pinto, apparently he must have been in a band with before, maybe. I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure. But yeah, Hurricane. I'm trying to think of the first song that he wrote. I want to say it was yeah, it was Hail to the Sunrise. That was him also. So a lot of these weird words are coming out of Simon Gilbrook also. Just want to let you know that. So he's a prog guy. And then the first song, of course, was written by the bass player and Jeff Scott Soto. Um, so 5 of them were written by Box and Lanson, and then the
Okay.
other 5 were the rest of the band. So I thought it was cool that the drummer wrote 4 songs because Kerslake was such a heavy writer that
Yeah.
here they have another drummer that's
Yeah.
also doing writing, which I
Yeah.
thought was cool. Um, I tell you, the musicianship, I got my goods and bads. Anything you want to say before I go into anything?
No,
We
not
talked
really. I
about
mean,
some
to
stuff.
me, I'm just, totally happy that they retain the Uriah Heep signature sound and are
Sure.
playing it convincingly, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, uh,
Yeah.
it's a hard band, to emulate.
Well, when I heard the first song, I was like, man, this doesn't sound like what I would thought Uriah Heep would sound like.
Mhm.
But then the rest of it is totally what I thought Uriah Heep would sound like. So it's
Right.
kind of like the first song is a little different than I
Yeah.
would expect from them.
Yeah.
Even though going back and listening to some of their stuff, it's not that far off base.
No,
You know,
it's
it's
just
still them.
they caught you off guard with the way they opened the album up.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's a great way to open the album. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
It smacks you in the face, and you're like, oh, okay. So anyway, I always do my good and bads, right?
Yep, 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 yep.
So I'll just go through the bads real quick. It's not that
Mhm.
much. I just thought that there were a couple verses that were similar sounding.
Right.
And earlier, what I was going to tell you about the vocal thing, I feel like there was no real change on the lead vocal sound. He kind of sounded the same all the time, and I mean,
Yeah,
I know he's the same singer, obviously, but it just sounded, I don't know. I just wish they would have put an effect on him every now and then or a little something. It wasn't
yeah.
bad. It was just kind of started to sound very similar in all the songs. Some of the
Yeah,
verses.
but I think it's been one of the things that Uriah Heep has always done. I mean, I don't ever recall him really putting anything on the vocals. Maybe a sustained echo here or there or something like that,
Yeah.
for a punctuation. But I don't ever really recall him putting a lot of effects on vocals anywhere.
I mean, the
Uh,
guy could sing. He's a great
yeah,
singer. Don't get me wrong. It's
yeah,
just that every song, like some of the verses, not every song, but some of the songs, the verses sounded so similar.
yeah,
The way he sang it, the cadence of the words, stuff like that.
yeah. But see,
Which isn't that big deal.
that's where bands like Styx took it to a different level,
Mhm.
because they got three or four guys in the band that can sing lead.
And you actually had that in some of the older Uriah Heep too. You
Yeah,
had two or three singers too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
even Mick Box sang back in the day. But
Hmm.
but then the other thing I had was sometimes on the solos, like the first part of the solo, they would play one way, and then the second part they would double time it, and you would get a double bass. And it started to get like, all right, your solos are starting to get too close to each other. Like the rhythm section. So
Right,
the first part, the keyboard's playing, they do a little slow, and then the second time he's and it's like he did that quite a few times. So I was kind of wishing that he wouldn't have done that. But other than that,
right,
that's it. The only other thing I'd say about the record as in general that I thought that should have done was maybe make it a true prog rock record and add a few of those songs to each other instead of having those couple of three songs that sound very similar. They could have put
right.
those together and made another epic song out of it, and then you would have had a true prog 4 or 5 songs, 10, 12 minutes, because that's what it felt like, was 2 or 3 12-minute songs to me.
Yeah,
you know um
yeah,
but that's it. That's my only complaints. And it's not really that I'm not really complaining. It's just picking. I have to pick, right? Because
yeah.
these songs are so good that there ain't much that I can pick on. So I got to look into it a little bit. You know how it is. And
I'm,
because I'm a jerk like that, right?
well,
And y'all click that subscribe button and you can tell me how much of a jerk I am. Anyway, or you can do it without clicking a subscribe, whatever. So the good stuff to me was all of the guys are great musicians, fantastic. I mean, it was tight, recorded well. The harmonies were awesome. I feel like all their hooks were catchy. I mean, you could play half this on the radio, and people would
yeah,
sing along with it. I mean, they're
yeah.
all sing along songs.
Hmm.
You know, at points. I mean, some of them get a little out there. Don't know what they're singing, but you could sing about it.
Right.
I have no idea what you're singing about, but you can sing it. So I mean, overall, I thought it was a great record, and it surprisingly, I was shocked that it was as good as it was. To tell you the
Yeah.
truth,
Well, I'm elated about the whole thing. I'm so glad. And I haven't followed Uriah Heep all these years. I mean, they've got 25 studio LPs out there.
yeah.
And like I say, they've got over 40 million in sales and albums.
What I was going to ask you is this
And
24 or 25? What is this record?
yeah, I guess this is 25.
Is it 25? Yeah.
This is the
Wow.
25th album. Yeah.
As far as studio, yeah,
And no, I think actually this one covers at least one of the live albums in the early days. But anyway, all that aside,
yeah,
I'm just elated about the whole thing because I loved when I was a teenager, I loved Uriah Heep, you know.
yeah,
But for some reason, and we touched on this a little earlier, it's about, they've been on the world stage forever, man, 50 years
for
at
sure.
least.
Hmm.
And which tells me that probably from the time of when I got out of the military up until this point here of really realizing that they're still together and still doing things.
Yeah,
I really hadn't given Uriah Heep a second thought other than wanting to pick up, some of the older stuff. Like that's why I've got Magician's Birthday. I
yeah,
mean, I go digging through the used albums and find cool albums and buy them.
yeah.
So I've been looking ever since I realized this album was out there, and they've got a brand new copy of "Look at Yourself" over at my record store. I got to pick it up. I got to do it. I
Yeah.
can't help it. It's going to happen.
I mean, if nothing else, this
Uh,
record is going to make me go back and listen to a lot of stuff. And I mean, I don't even know what they've done in the past 10 years, but it's probably just as good as what we just got.
I'm going to imagine it is.
So,
I'm
I mean,
interested in going back and finding some of the later stuff that Kerslake was on and stuff, you know.
for sure.
Um, and I imagine that's going to go back to probably right around the 76 to 80 era, which is
Yeah.
probably right around about the time Kerslake probably had to drop out.
Well, I'm definitely going to go back and get Demons and Wizards. That's an album I've been wanting to get for a long time, and I've just never went out and done it. You
Yeah.
know, I feel like I should have probably paid more attention to Uriah Heep, and I never did. And that's just on me. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the whole thing is if you want a good starter collection, look at yourself, Demons and Wizards, Magician's Birthday, Sweet Freedom. Pick this one up too,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and you still got another 20 albums to look for.
right. And that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like I should have been hanging with these guys because I like all the
Yeah.
dudes in the band. I've always have. You know, we've done some of their songs. I just never went and bought anything. I don't
Well,
know. I don't know why.
there hasn't been any promo on their stuff or anything. The only reason why I knew
No.
that this came out is because I happened to be looking on Amazon and I'm looking at the new albums.
Hmm.
Bam, there it is. I'm like, my God, Uriah Heep, brand new album.
But you know, but we're always listening to stuff, and a lot of our stuff comes from Frontiers Records. And Jeff Scott Soto seems to have his hand on everything, it seems. I mean, that
Yeah.
guy's everywhere anymore. And I'm pretty sure that we've probably even mentioned that he said something about Uriah Heep
Hmm.
last year or so. So that could have put that on your radar too, you
Yeah.
know, because,
Very possible.
because we have been diving into some Jeff Scott Soto in the past year.
Yeah.
And
But
of
see,
course, he wrote the
I,
first
I,
song with the guy.
I
So,
kind of look at Uriah Heep, though, a lot like I looked at the older Blue Oyster Cult.
mhm,
Yeah. You know, before they had I'm Burning for You.
right.
I mean that was the Blue Oyster Cult that I was into before that,
Yeah,
before the video MTV stuff,
right.
you know, and same thing with Uriah Heep. I was into them because it was all underground. It wasn't
Yeah,
played on AM radio or anything, you know,
right.
which is funny to say now. Hell, nobody listens to any radio anymore.
No,
But
yeah,
at the time, you can make a judgment on what was cool music by finding your FM underground station, and that's
right.
where you come up with these. Yeah, that's where I first heard Jethro Tull, Deep Purple. You know, I mean, all these
Right.
bands. You
Stuff you
know, I
weren't
mean,
hearing on
they weren't
mainstream.
getting they weren't getting popular mainstream play.
Right.
It was all
Exactly.
underground stuff.
Yeah.
And now I don't know. You know, if you get lost in the mix, you get lost in the mix.
Right.
And I think that's what's happened, like with Uriah Heep. And I know Blue Oyster Cult. They've just released a couple of albums here in the past couple of years, and which might be what we need to look into next.
Well, we did one last year.
Yeah, well, that's true. We did.
Yeah. And it was pretty good, really. Um, yeah. So anyway, with this one here, man, I really liked it. I know I sounded like I picked it a little bit, but I mean, I'm giving it an 8.9, dude. I mean,
I'm
it's a fantastic record.
I'm going with a 9.5 on it because I love the instrumentation. I love the way it was produced.
Yeah.
The mixing engineering was excellent on it. These guys are on top of their game, and I got to tell you, I didn't hear anything in there that offended me at all. You know, I'm sure I can sit here and pick it apart,
Yep.
but I'm just looking at the package, and I'm glad.
Well, one thing that I got to say about it is, man, Mick Box is a beast.
Yeah.
He's a
Oh yeah.
great. That's one thing I'm taking out of this record is why the hell doesn't everybody know who Mick Box is? You know,
Hmm.
everybody should be talking about Mick Box. If he's been this good, which I know he has, all these years, somebody needs to start talking about this guy because this dude is ripping on this record.
Yep.
You
Oh
know,
yeah, man. You
so
know,
he impressed me probably more than anybody. The rest of the band's great. Don't get me wrong, but just hearing Mick, it's like, what? How come this guy ain't out there? you know. So anyway,
Well, I'll tell you this, he's got a pretty strong hand on what's going on with Uriah Heep, even though these all he's only original left, but I swear to God, they didn't lose the original sound.
no, and I tell you, he's probably been the guy that's made the call for a lot of years with them, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, and he's got some guys that he likes as he's sticking with them, and you know, it's working. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
working. So,
Yep. Yep.
all right, well, we'll go ahead and get out of here on that note. I gave it an 8.9. Mike gave it a 9.5. Uriah
That's
Heep,
right.
Chaos and Color. Go get the
Yep.
deluxe one, man, so you can hear the demo, and you also get this cool patch.
There
You
you
know,
go.
but the
There you go.
demo, go check that out if you haven't heard it for Save Me Tonight. It's pretty interesting to hear it after hearing the other version too. So
Yep.
anyway, all right, guys. Until next time, y'all stay safe.
And peace out and listen to the music.